Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and we're in day 3 of the Learning 2.0 virtual conference. It has been just a blast, and we're so delighted to have Esther Wojcicki here with us. She's being helped by Cable Green from Creative Commons, our old and good friend, who's stepping in because Esther has a hoarse throat and isn't sure she's going to make it through. But I'm going to shortly turn it over to them, and you will be pleased by both, I'm quite certain. Thanks to our conference sponsors this year, Follett and Intel, and thanks to support from Mighty Bell, Blackboard Collaborate, taking it global, EdWeb, and Edutopia. Cable, did you want to introduce Esther?
Yes, thanks, Steve. I'll be happy to. It's my distinct honor to introduce Esther Wojcicki. Just a few quick notes about her. I won't read her whole bio. That's in the session. But many of you know Esther. She is famous around the world. She is a high school teacher at Palo Alto High School in California, where she's built a journalism program since 1985. It's the largest high school journalism program in the United States. Has won many, many awards for the great work that they've done. And as Esther is going to talk about today, the core of their activities are really based around the theory of problem-based learning, where students are getting engaged in their learning and the critical thinking skills that they learn in the classroom. And Esther will talk about why that's so important, not just in journalism, but in every field, in every 21st century job that students will have when they graduate from our educational institutions. And with that, let me go ahead and hop off. I'm here only as backup to Esther, and hopefully her voice will make it through. She's got a nasty case of laryngitis, and so we thank her for powering through and coming to today's session. Esther, if you'll just click on the talk button in the upper left, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Cable, very much for this great introduction, and thank you, Steve, for this opportunity. And yes, I caught the first cold of the year. Not quite sure which student it was that sneezed on me, but here I am. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the 21st century skills that I think students can learn through studying journalism. So people often think that I'm trying to develop or to produce all these journalists, and they ask these questions, my God, where are they going to get jobs? What was 600 kids in the program? There's not 600 jobs out there. I'm not actually trying to produce journalists. I am trying to produce people who think, and I'm using journalism as a tool because that training teaches you to think. And so I'll just click to the next slide. So what are 21st century skills that we're all trying to do? These are all, they're very important, and this is what all the employers want. This is what everybody wants from all the students when they graduate from high school or even college. So I'll just go through them briefly. The ability to communicate. That's number one. I don't care whether you're a doctor, businessman, whether you have your own gardening business, no matter what it is, you should be able to communicate. To adapt easily to change. That's actually very important for everybody in life. To work in teams. Just think about your typical classroom. People do not work in teams. They work individually. They've got an assignment, they do their assignment, they turn their assignment into the teacher, and then there isn't a lot of teamwork. Sometimes there's a little bit of teamwork or group work, but in general there's not very much. Problem solve. So you could say, well, they do problem solving on their worksheets and things like that. I want them to problem solve in the real world. I want them to problem solve all the time. That's how you learn. It's not learning by watching somebody else tell you about problem solving. Then to analyze and conceptualize. And this is, again, a very important skill for all kids, for all people. To reflect on and improve your performance. A lot of kids don't reflect on their performance. They just, I got a D, that's it, whatever. You need to try to figure out, what was it that created the problem? Is there some way that we can fix it, make it better. To manage yourself. So I believe really strongly in kids managing themselves. So I'm not a micromanager. Kids come in class, and I don't have a whole classroom full of rules. I basically make the statement, we all have to get together, we all have to work together. This is a class where we're all together, all, 30 of us or whatever, and I try to help them develop these skills. To create, innovate, and criticize, to be able to criticize other people without them getting upset. You set up an atmosphere in the classroom where you critique is a basic, it's just understood for everybody that you are part of a group and you are working together in this critique, not of you personally. It's like we're working on the project together, trying to help everybody be the best they can be and to help the whole project be the best. To learn new things all the time and to cross specialist borders so that you don't become a specialist. So I have kids writing sports, they write news, they write features, they write all these different things. And people might say, well, this is great for a journalism class. Well, I teach English, or I teach social studies, or I teach something else. I can't fit that in. Turns out that these skills can be taught and used in pretty much any class, and I'm going to show you how and why. And these are the skills. This list right here, this is exactly what is coming out of the U.S. Common Core Standards and out of the PISA exam. This is exactly these 21st century skills are the ones that everybody is trying to teach students worldwide. So here's the demand for skills and how it's changed. This is what, back in 1900, everybody wanted low-skilled job workers, right? You had to follow instructions. That was the key. If you didn't follow instructions, you weren't a good worker. Now, if you take a look at 2000, you'll see nobody wants those low-skilled worker people who follow instructions and don't think all the time. They want people that actually think, knowledge work jobs. And so it's actually, this one is from 2000, but if I had one more part of the graph, you would see that it would be even higher than what it is in 2000. It would be up above the 80% area. Everybody wants workers that have knowledge works, skills. Okay, next one is, so how can journalism help teach these skills? Take a look. So just look at what journalism teaches. How to search for information. Just think of what a journalist does. They search for information, they know how to use the internet, they know how to interview, how to organize information, and how to distinguish fact from opinion. Wouldn't you want all kids to know these things? So how to write so someone wants to read it. Most students write those 5-paragraph essays. Have you ever seen a 5-paragraph essay in a magazine or a newspaper? No one wants to read those 5-paragraph essays except the poor teacher who's being paid to read those. You want kids to be able to write in a variety of different formats that are actually engaging. And so that, when they graduate, they can feel comfortable writing memos or, commenting on things, whatever they need to do in the world. How to be logical, how to collaborate, this is all part of journalism. How to use digital tools, how to work with your peers, and how to think and analyze. And I put kids together who don't like each other. I was like, if you go home and ask your parents if they love the people they work with, and if they just want to be with them all the time, then you too can have the same thing. That most people can't. Most people don't really like the people that they're working with. And so I said, you just have to learn how to get along. You learn how to get along together. And so you too need to do it. Anyway, it works. The kids all eventually become friends. So journalism also teaches what is copyright and how to respect it. What is Creative Commons and how to find what is open and shareable. We have a lot of kids that are just taking stuff. They don't really understand copyright. So this is something that is really important in journalism. You don't want to copy somebody else's stuff. There's just been a plagiarism scandal. by some very well-known journalists. And it was by accident. But still, kids don't do a lot of stuff by accident. They just copy and paste. So we need to explain to them what is copyright and how it works. So this is what we do. So right now, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about Creative Commons, and maybe Cable can jump in right here and talk about Creative Commons.
I'd be happy to. Thanks, Esther. We'll give Esther a chance to rest her voice and have a few sips of honey tea. I hope she has it in front of her. So you have to go back about 10 years and think about what was happening on the Internet. So think about that moment in time when you all had your first functional browser and you sort of had this Eureka moment that the Internet was here and that we were connected and networked in a way that humanity had never been connected before. And a bunch of people, educators, journalists, artists, and others started to ask the question, if it's easy, technically easy to share on the Internet, how do I share with as many people as I possibly can? And what quickly became, what everybody realized was that it was not easily to legally share with everybody that you wanted to. So let's take one of Esther's lesson plans, for example. Let's say that Esther says, look, I'm an educator. My intent is to help as many people learn these skills around the world as possible, and I want to share this freely with everybody. What Esther knows, but not everybody knew, was that her works were copyrighted. The moment she created them, they were copyrighted under U.S. copyright law, and this is true around almost every country in the world. The moment you produce something, it's under copyright. But remember, Esther's intent was not to make money on this thing. Her intent was not to keep it to herself. Her intent is to share it with all other educators in the world so that they too can use these skills that she's been talking about to help teach others. And so 10 years before Creative Commons, there was really no easy way to put a license, an open copyright license, on your copyrighted work. So it doesn't get rid of your copyright. What it does is it adds to your copyright. Think of it as an addendum to your copyright. So what you're saying when you put a Creative Commons license on, let's say Esther put it on her lesson plans, is that you're extending some freedoms under some conditions to everybody else in the world. So let me, if you look at this diagram that Esther has here, what it shows is kind of this continuum or this spectrum of copyright, which we call all rights reserved, all the way over here to public domain, which is no rights, right? You've given up all your copyright and it's in the public domain. And in between here, we've got Creative Commons. So what Creative Commons allows you to do is to keep your copyright, but still share freely and openly with everyone else in the world under the conditions that you choose. So let's go forward. We'll talk real briefly about those conditions. So with CC licenses or Creative Commons licenses, you have really there's 4 choices of conditions. The first one is called attribution, and this one is actually not a choice. All of the licenses require that if you use Esther's lesson plan, you must give her credit in the way that she's specified. And this makes sense to us in teaching and learning, right? When we use someone else's work, we should give them credit. We cite them. This is what we do. This is what we teach journalism students. This is what we teach all students. You give proper attribution. So this is a requirement of every Creative Commons license. The next 3 here are options that you, the copyright holder, you, the author, get to decide. So the first one here is called share alike. And share alike means if you take Esther's lesson plan and you modify it somehow, and that's fine to do. However, the new version, the new derivative work that you've created, the new lesson plan, you must share that with the world under the same license that Esther used. We'll talk about what some of the licenses are. This, for example, is what Wikipedia does. So Wikipedia uses an attribution share alike license. And what Wikipedia is saying is if you go into Wikipedia and make changes to their articles, by law, you are required to share your changes forward. And if you don't like those terms, that's okay, but you don't get to edit a Wikipedia article. And you also can't take from a Wikipedia article and use it in a different resource. You have to agree to share alike. The next one here is called non-commercial, and this one very simply says, you may use my work for free, but you may not sell it. You may not commercially profit from it. So that's fairly clear. The last one here is called no derivatives. That means you may use my work, my lesson plan for free, but you may not change it. Right? So you cannot modify it, you can't change it in any way, shape, or form. Generally speaking, in education, we tend to stick with the Creative Commons attribution license, this first one here, or an attribution share alike license. Those are commonly held up as kind of best practices in education. Non-commercial gets tricky because there are some for-profit entities out there that still teach. There are groups in rural areas, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where the only educational option is defined as commercial. And so this one's a little bit fuzzy, and there's arguments over exactly what commercial use is and not. And then this last one we really stay away from in education, because if you think about what teachers do, teachers are always taking a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and they're modifying, they're remixing, they're coming up with the appropriate mix of materials for their learning environment, for their class, for that day. And if we put this restriction on and not allowing them to make changes, then you're really binding them, and you're not allowing them to use their creativity to meet their local needs. But nevertheless, there are 4 conditions, and what they yield are these 6 different licenses. And so again, the first one is just called attribution, or sometimes you'll hear it called CC BY, so for the Creative Commons attribution. The next one, as you can imagine, they just go down the list. So this one's called attribution share alike, because you've got to give credit, and if you change it, you've got to share the changes forward. Then you've got kind of a remix of all the license conditions. So there's attribution no derivatives, you can use it for free, got to give credit, but you can't change it, and then on down the list here. Different communities out there, in different communities in culture, different communities in government, in data, in journal articles, in education, they use different licenses for different reasons. And in fact, there are businesses out there that use Creative Commons licenses as part of their business, and quite successfully. And if you're interested in any of these details, you can find all this on the Creative Commons website, which I put in the chat window a little bit before. This is an exciting resource that you may like. If you go to the website, it's whyopeneducationmatters.org, and I'll put the link in just a minute. This is a competition that Creative Commons and the U.S. Department of Education and the Open Society Foundations recently ran. Thank you for putting the link in. And the competition was very simple. Everybody in the world, please make a video about why you think open education matters, and then post it under a Creative Commons attribution license, and we'll have a panel of celebrity judges, and we've got prize money. And at first we were real worried because there weren't very many submissions coming in, but of course they all flooded in the last 3 days of the competition, and there are just wonderful videos up there. Some of them created by elementary school students. There's some high school students rapping about why open education matters. It's just fabulous. And the winners are posted on that website. And of course, all of these videos are openly licensed. Maybe just pause for 1 second on this idea of open education. For something to be an open educational resource, it must have 2 components. The first component is it must be free, meaning it must be available at no cost. It must be gratis. You, the teacher, must be able to download that thing from the internet or get a physical copy of it at no cost. So that's number 1. Number 2 is it must either be in the public domain or it must have an open license on it that allows you to revise it, remix it, reuse, and redistribute it. So you've got to be able to use it in the way legally that you want to use it in your classroom. If you can't do those 2 things, it's not an open educational resource. And then, of course, there are many examples of open educational resources. One of the most famous is MIT. About 10 years ago, the Hewlett Foundation provided some funding to MIT OpenCourseWare, and believe it or not, MIT opened up its doors and said, here are all of our courses. They are online, including the assessments and exams, and anybody in the world can download them and use them as you see fit. Right? And there are hundreds of universities around the world who have followed MIT's lead. Culture is another huge area. So if you go to Flickr, for example, just go to Google and type in Flickr and Creative Commons, and what you'll find is that there are millions, literally, there's 4 or 5 million, I believe, photos on Flickr that are openly licensed, so that you can go and you can take those images legally and use them in your PowerPoints and in other classroom situations. And it's not just images, but movies. It's art galleries. There's a whole movement going on of artists and galleries that are openly licensing their works for a variety of reasons. Some for commercial reasons, because when they share, they find that they can, in fact, make more money with their business, and some because they just want to share. They're in the business of improving humanity, and this is the best way that they know how. Many of you are probably familiar with the Khan Academy. This is another great example of modular videos on very specific topics, not more than about 7 or 8 minutes, and the Khan Academy also uses Creative Commons licenses on all of their videos, so that you have the legal rights to not only use it for free, but to modify them. And at this point, let me hop off and turn it back over to Esther.
Thank you, Cable. Thank you. That was very helpful. Got to take a little rest here. So if you just think about, again, the journalism curriculum and just what you saw, journalism also teaches video. I mean, video is really journalism today. All the kids want to be on YouTube. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I usually have to ban in my classroom, because I run an open classroom, is YouTube. Because if I get them on YouTube, I don't have their attention anymore. And that's all they want to do. But what I try to do is teach them how to make videos that then they can upload to YouTube and promote on their own way. So I am spending a lot of time here, like how to get your main ideas across using media. So like just imagine the thinking skills that go into trying to create a video where you're getting the most important ideas across first. That is really thinking. Most kids don't actually think. They just regurgitate the information that they learn. And what I'm trying to get them to do is figure out what is the most important thing, and then how do you present it. And so I also am using social media tools to gather information. So this year my students have all their publications are self-supporting, and every time somebody buys an advertisement, what they get is free either tweeting or Facebook posts or Google Plus posts or Pinterest posts. So they get to pick. So the advertiser thinks this is absolutely great. But what is really good for me is my students are learning how to use social media firsthand in a real way. And then they interact with the business person and they see how it impacts their business. So, I mean, I might be, helping them a lot, which is good, but I also would like my students to learn all this stuff. So these are the ones, how to use Twitter, Google+, Facebook, and Pinterest in advertising. So right now, if you just think about it, there's 4 million CC licensed videos on YouTube. That's a lot. And so your students can contribute some more on those. Actually, it'd be great if you could, especially people in the United States, could stay tuned, because we're going to be launching something called Engage 2012, which is kind of a competition that is going to enable students to interview people around the country about what they think about the issues in the presidential election, and then submit those videos to a website on YouTube, and then the kids that have the best videos are going to win prizes. So the website we're going to launch in September. Otherwise, I would have something about it right now. But just stay tuned, and you will see. The idea is to get kids, again, to use their thinking skills and to use their social media to create things that are actually helping everyone understand the world in a better way. So, by the way, journalism ties to the Common Core standards in the United States. Here's an example. This is just one standard. It ties to many standards. You want to write informative, explanatory text to examine and convey complex ideas, concepts, and information clearly and accurately through the effective selection, organization, and analysis of content. That's what you do when you write a story, exactly that. So you have to figure out, you have to effectively select the information that you get, organize it, and present it in a way that people want to read it. And so the main things that I teach, and I'm going to go do it again, is I teach that there's 4 basic journalistic styles of writing. One of them is features. And I start off the year with a personality feature. Actually, my students are doing this today while I'm not there in school, actually. They've already done the interview. They interview each other in class and then write a personality feature about each other. So this personality feature that I give them as a model is something that I've pulled from the professional press. So I don't want them to write something like, John was born at Stanford Hospital on whatever date. I want them to write something that is actually engaging, that has a focus. I don't want just a routine sort of chronological account, when you were born, what you did when you were little, what you did when you were a little older, what you did when you were even older. That does not show any selection, no thought process. I want them to think about what's the most interesting thing about that person and how can you frame it in a personality feature so that somebody might actually want to read it. It's a great way to get kids to know each other, and so they write these personality features. Today they're doing it on computers, on Google Docs, and they're sitting next to the person they interviewed in case they don't have enough information. They can ask them. And then they share it with me. So here I am at home, but I can still see it because it's all on Google Docs. They have to share everything that they're doing. And then they'll revise it. And after they revise it multiple times, actually usually about 2 or 3 times, then we're going to publish them all in a little booklet that we then just hand out in class. So then they all get to know each other, and they read each other's information. It's a great way to get to know kids, great way for them to get to know each other, and the hidden agenda is, can you write? Or can you take this information, synthesize it, organize it, and write it up in a way that somebody's going to want to read it? So this is one assignment that I do. So here's an example of a personality feature by a freshman. A freshman wrote this a couple years ago, and he just started this. As dust settles over Taipei, Taiwan, a young man with a camera walks on narrow streets filled with conversation and laughter of local and tourists alike. Breathing in the scent of Taiwanese noodles and spicy tofu, sophomore Chris Brown feels perfectly at home as long as he has his camera. I'm always taking pictures of everything, Chris said. I don't just think I could change that because there's just too much to see. So this whole feature on Chris is about how he loves photography. And nowhere in there is like a mention of his brother and his sister and his dog and his cat or whatever, because it does not relate to the focus of the feature. The thing is about Chris as a photographer. And so this is just an example of a personality feature that kids can do. Reviews are another great way to get kids excited about writing. So movie reviews, website reviews, gaming reviews, restaurant reviews, product reviews. So this is something I'm doing in an English class. You could do it in a social studies class. It just depends on, the situation. But here's an example of a review. They did a movie review about Jane Eyre, and this is just, a review that was written about a movie. It's not a movie report. So, and I know many people do this, so a movie report is like, tell me what you saw in that movie, verbatim. I don't want that. I want an evaluation of the movie and why, based on, and they have to support it. So opinion pieces are another thing that I have them write. Opinion pieces, columns, editorials. And the reason that we do that is, I'm sure if you work with students, no matter where they are in the world, you find that they're really opinionated. They think they know everything. And maybe they do, but, you know, that's great for teaching them to write. They're excited if they get to pick their own topic. That's actually the key. You know, if they get to write about what they want to write about, they're going to do a really great job. If you assign the topic, then of course it's harder. So students can write about local issues, state issues, national issues, or even international issues. And it turns out, like, if they're really opinionated, enjoy this writing style. They love to write opinion pieces. So I had them write an opinion piece last year. We have an open campus on the school where students can walk out and go to the local shopping center, and they wrote an opinion piece on what would happen if the school decided to have a closed campus. So you could not leave the campus at lunch. I'll tell you, they wrote really long, well-organized opinion pieces on keeping the campus open. They loved it. So here's an example of student opinion writing. Some are not for academics. Doesn't that sound like a student? Like they don't want to work. Not at all. They just want to stay at home. But still, this is an opinion piece. Then it came out pretty well. So news writing, I have them, again, finding out like what's going on in the school. Picking what's the most important thing is hard for kids. It's a great way for them to learn to differentiate. And in terms of news, I actually do something that's kind of easy. I invite other teachers into the class, and I have the students interview them about anything, and then they have to write it up as news. The teachers like it, and the students like it, and I like it, and it's fun for the kids. So here's an example of a news story that they wrote. This girl that used to be part of the class in 2008, she has been given an ESPY award, which is a pretty important award. So anyway, this is just an example of a news story that they wrote. So here is Palo Alto High School. We actually have more than 550 kids now electing to take journalism. And this is an elective, so they don't have to take it. It's a writing elective. So the question is like, why do they want to take this class? Well, it's primarily because they're really interested in expressing their own opinion, being taught all these digital tools, and having all this independence. So if you just think about it, teenagers everywhere, their number one goal in life is to be independent and recognized for being independent. So if you give them these opportunities and you teach them to think and give them all these tools, they will do it. This is an example of the newspaper that is published every couple of weeks. This is called the Campanile. And I don't do a single thing on this. They do everything. I do teach the skills. I teach them, how to do layout design, how to write, how to use InDesign, how to use Photoshop. But after that, they do everything. They come up with their own design. They come up with their own story ideas. They come up with everything, which ties into that incredible drive for independence that teenagers exhibit. So here's another example of the student newspaper. So now I know that you can't do this in a typical class. And what I'm doing this year in 9th grade is I'm working with just regular 9th grade classes. They're not going to be producing newspapers like this, but they can produce a blog together. They can produce a website on, like, for example, Google Sites has websites. There's a lot of website designs that are really simple for kids to do. This is another example of what they've done. This is just another section. Of course, you can see that story idea is not something that I would come up with. I'm not a picky eater. But you, as you can imagine, most kids are picky eaters. And, if their food is not segregated on their plate, they won't touch it. So this, of course, is their story idea. This is another example. This is the back page of the same publication. So here are the other publications that we have. We have actually now 5 additional publications in addition to the Campanile, the newspaper. So we have Verde, and as you can see that this topic is something that they came up with. Another word, Animal House, Embracing Race, hazing. We did this story won first place in the country. It was an investigative piece on hazing in the school, and it was a great story. It took a lot of research, a lot of work, but it stopped all the hazing, which had been going on for like more than 20 years. Here we go with another one. This is the opinion piece, True Life, I'm Gay, Unconventional Piercings. As you can see, all these are story ideas that they come up with themselves. This is a photo competition that we had. Kids from around the school submit photos and then we publish them, so that could be related to a photography class. We now have a sports magazine. This is something that can be done anywhere. This magazine all concentrates on sports. All these kids are students at the school. These are all stories about the students. We make them all look like heroes. This is an 80-page magazine about all the different sports and all the students in the sports. So what are they learning? They're learning how to write while they're covering something that they're really interested in. And, if your school, your students aren't interested in sports, maybe they can have a food magazine, or maybe whatever. They can have, or it doesn't even have to be a magazine, it can be a website. So this costs money, and it's all self-supported by advertising. As I mentioned earlier, they all have to get ads, and they learn a lot by having to get an ad. It's the real world. So this Viking also has a website so that you can get the scores up really, really quickly. This is our website for the actually composite of all the publications. It's called Voice. It is updated several times a day, and here at the top you can see the publications listed: Campanile, Viking, Verde, In Focus. In Focus is the broadcast journalism program. Madrona is the yearbook. And so now we also have a magazine just started this year, or last spring, it's a foreign affairs magazine. And again, they started it themselves with my assistance. I didn't do too much. And we're also starting one more this year. Again, they want to do it. It's kind of like a Rolling Stone magazine for kids. So we have a new website for teachers in grades K through 12 on deeper learning with journalism. And here it is. It's called Journalistic Learning. And this is a professor that I worked with at the University of Oregon. And he just got his PhD in June. And he's a great guy. And he did a thesis on journalism in the classroom. Here it is. And this is Ed Madison, who teaches at the University of Oregon. And this is his website. And it's got so much information on it. It has videos. It shows you how to do all the different things. I'm part of this website. I helped a little bit with this. And so I recommend this website. As I said back there, that's the website address right here, journalisticlearning.org. And if you just go to Journalistic Learning, I think you probably just get it. And there's a video of me, and it doesn't play here, I'm sorry to say. This is just a screenshot. But talking about journalism and what is going on. But it's not just me. There's other teachers in the program. So it's not just me doing this. It's like all these other teachers in the program find that this is absolutely the way to engage students. It is so incredible. You don't have to fight with kids to learn. They want to learn. It's just amazing. Actually, my number one problem is getting them to leave. They're like, it's time to go home. They don't want to go home. So, if you could just get a little bit of this into your program, I am sure that, you'd probably find a lot of the same engagement. So here is his thesis as part of the website. You can download his thesis. What he shows is actually very interesting. He shows that kids that study journalism score at a much higher level than kids who just take English classes. And it's part of the study. So, this just came out in June. Hopefully it's going to have an impact. And as I said, I'm trying to include journalistic writing in a straight English class. So this year I'm teaching regular English, ninth grade English, and then I teach the regular books that everybody teaches of Life and Man and All Quiet on the Western Front and Romeo and Juliet. But then I intersperse all these different writing styles so that kids are not just doing 5-paragraph essays, they're doing other things that are more engaging. So while they have to do a 5-paragraph essay, and I tell them, you need to do it because the SAT and all these other groups need to see that you know how, they're doing other things that are really engaging for them. So they're better able to, tolerate some of the stuff they don't like to do as well. So if you have any questions, I would be delighted to answer any questions. This is my email address, esther@creativecommons.org. And I would be happy to help anybody that would like to do more of this type of writing and getting kids to think in this kind of way. If you just, email me, check the website. I have another website also. It's called 21stcenturylit.org. That is, write it down here, 21stcenturylit.org. It also has a lot of information.
So I'm clapping for Esther right now. It's hard to find the clapping button, but it's the smiley face and down to applause. If you click on the hand, we'll think you want to ask a question, which you're welcome to do. But my applause is for Esther and for Cable, especially for Esther coming on in obviously less than fully healthy circumstances. Most appreciated.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I'm a little under the weather here. But thank you to Cable for helping. It was terrific. And thank you to Steve, too. But if you have any questions, like I said, email me or, I'd be happy to answer any questions now if anybody has any questions.
So you can put a question in the chat if you'd like, or you can raise your hand. That's the third icon over in the participant window, and we'll give you the microphone. John wants to know
right
to
now.
bridge from writing. Perfect.
Well, could you read that question to me one
Sure.
more time?
To bridge from writing to video, have you had students write news scripts?
Yes, I do I've had them write news script. I also have them do, they do scripting, so when they're making video, I think it's an important thing for them to think about how they are going to actually make the video in advance before just running out there with the camera and just trying to take anything random. So yes, I do have them do news scripts, and it's a good idea. You can just create those little boxes and put it, 6 or 8 little boxes on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then have them go through and write what they would be doing in each of the frames. It works pretty well. Are there any prerequisites?
Esther, there you go. And there was actually one before that.
Prerequisites.
Go ahead.
What I'm just going to say, and you can give me the one just before that after I answer this one, there is no prerequisite. I take kids who have flunked in other classes. I take kids who have, I guess the main prerequisite, you have to be able to read, and you have to be able to write a little bit, but a little bit maybe 5th grade level. But for the most part, what happens is that kids get so engaged by whatever it is they're writing about that their writing just dramatically improves. It just, like I have one of my students now, this year he's a senior. I had him as a freshman. This is a kid that could not write a complete sentence, and now he's writing long columns on fantasy football. This is his favorite thing. I never even heard of fantasy football. But, and his writing is just off the charts. So I think if you get them to write about something that is important to them, they will learn pretty well. And what was the previous question?
The previous question was, do you teach the complexity of copyright to your students too?
Yes, I do teach. I want to make sure they understand copyright. That's why it's all part of the whole journalism thing, because no plagiarism. They've got to understand it. And then the other question is, how do you want your work to travel? Do you want lots of people to be able to read it? Do you want lots of people to be able to share it? If that's the case, you have to put a Creative Commons attribution license on it. If it's just locked up in copyright, it's just going to stay on our website. It's not going to go anywhere. So, interestingly enough, they all want to share. They all see the value in sharing, and so they all put Creative Commons licenses on their work. So in order for me to explain Creative Commons, they have to understand copyright. And it's so important for kids worldwide. All kids should understand copyright. They should understand it and respect it. There's so much out there in the free and open pot that they don't have to just take stuff that's copyrighted. Most kids don't even know about, the free stuff, so that's the problem.
Rhonda wants to know if there's a peer review for the student scripture articles, and is there a selection process that involves students, or does everything just get posted or published?
There's a huge peer review. Forgot to mention that. Thank you for that question. Yes, they edit each other's stuff. So like on the newspaper that you saw there, I have editors, I have section editors. Every single article that they publish is peer reviewed 4 times. So they all peer review each other. The whole idea is for them to get to understand that writing is a process and that nobody writes the perfect article the first time. And so, it's built into the whole system. And so the reporters, they collaborate with each other, then they work with the section editors, and they work with the editors-in-chief. I mean, I basically feel like I'm the conductor in a big orchestra. All I'm doing is making sure that they are all working together effectively. I do not correct any of this stuff, except, I look over things to make sure that there's no issues. I make suggestions here and there, but for the most part, they learn so much from, each other from the beginning class, and then just being interested. It helps them to become more, to better writers because they're interested in being the best. I think
I've gotten all the questions. If you have a question that hasn't been asked and you put it in the chat, I apologize, but feel free to post it again. Or feel free to raise your hand, which is the third icon over in the participant window, and we'll give you the microphone.
Well, there's somebody here who said getting rid of correcting papers. If you have them peer review, then you don't correct papers to that degree. Let them do it, and by the time it gets to you, it's going to be much better. And I know that some people think that this isn't the case. You need to keep trying it. It's easy to put them together and have them edit each other's stuff, especially if they get graded on how well they peer review. They will peer review really well. And yes, they do earn grades for the class. This class has got University of California A to G credit for English, and so that it gets credit. And universities given credit. So yes, this is a class for credit. Let's see. There is no one way to write it, and the teacher doesn't hold the key. That's one thing that I think is really important. There's so many ways to write things. And the teacher doesn't always have the key. That's what you have to say repeatedly to students, that it's really important to know. I mean, there is no one perfect lead for a story. There are many perfect leads, or many good leads. And just take a look at, peer-to-peer university. It's based on peer review. Also, a lot of these classes in Coursera and Udacity, a lot of peer review. So
there's a question about plagiarism. How frequently is it a problem?
Actually, it's never a problem for me, and the reason it's never a problem is that the penalty is really harsh. You're dropped from the class. So nobody really wants to take a risk. And also, I explain to them over and over again that the reason people plagiarize is because A, they haven't done the research, B, they feel bad that their writing isn't good enough. And I explain, everybody's work can be just as good as another person's, just have to revise it. And so I don't think I've ever dropped a kid for the last 10 years. They're all very, very good. They're all careful. And the other thing, I tell them, if you plagiarize in your English class or another class and you turn a single paper into the teacher, you might be able to get away with it. But if you plagiarize in a journalism class where thousands of people are reading your story, somebody is going to come up with the idea that, oh yeah, I read that in the Wall Street Journal, for example. Oh, maybe you didn't write it.
Has the New Yorker been calling you for advice?
They should be, right. I know, that's a pretty sad story. I feel sorry for him. I think he probably made an honest mistake. He's such a talented guy. I don't know how he managed to plagiarize 2 paragraphs of the New Yorker.
But both the New Yorker and the New York Times have
anyway.
really struggled with this.
Yes, that's true. Well, and I don't understand how he could have done it. He's a genius, the guy. Just hopefully he learned his lesson. I tell kids, better to quote somebody. Just say, according to the New York Times, according to the New Yorker magazine, blank, 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 and then you give credit. I said, that way, not only do you give credit to somebody, but it looks like your article is well researched. So I don't know how that ever happened to him, but it looks like he's been reinstated, at least partially reinstated. I don't know what's going on. I missed some of the other questions. They're going by so quickly.
I don't think you've missed any. There have just been some people making comments.
Oh, here's one.
Go ahead.
Comments. And what used to be considered cheating is now considered collaboration. That is absolutely true. In the past, kids could not collaborate on their homework. That was called cheating. And my idea is let them learn it, okay? I don't really care how you get there. As long as you learn it, that's my key. And so I encourage collaboration. The educational studies show that kids learn 80% of what they learn outside of school. So why is that? The reason is because they talk to each other, they collaborate, they learn from each other. So why not bring the outside of school into school? Let them collaborate in school. Let them work together in school. You saw the quality of the publications that they produce. This is all collaboration. And then they can do it themselves, because I have offshoots all over the place of kids starting magazines in colleges everywhere, and other magazines at Palo Alto High School. Once they learn how to do it, boy, they want to do it everywhere. Here's another.
Esther,
Any
I
other questions, Steve,
actually need to shift over to another room to help them get started. I'm going to let Peggy close up here for you, but I want to thank you and Cable again personally. Really appreciate your being here. Please, you've got about 5 more minutes if you want to answer any more questions. Really appreciate your being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. Oh, there was a question on how many go into journalism careers. I have hundreds of kids that do go into journalism, but most of the kids go into other careers. So I can pretty much point to people on almost every major publication in the United States that has one of my students. But that's just a small number compared to the rest of them. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you especially to Cable. And I'm really, really happy that everybody was here. It's very exciting for me to see people from all over the world. It's really amazing. What a great opportunity. Bye-bye, everybody.